Dawn Sullivan had learned to keep her gaze downcast in Marysville, Nebraska, because looking folks in the eye only invited trouble in a town that had already decided she wasn't worth knowing. The spring of 1877 brought no relief from the whispers that followed her like persistent flies on a summer day as she hurried down Main Street, clutching her market basket close. "Miss Sullivan!" Mrs. Parker's shrill voice cut through the morning bustle. Dawn pretended not to hear, quickening her pace past the general store. "Dawn Sullivan, I know you hear me." Dawn reluctantly turned, forcing a polite smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Parker." The older woman adjusted her bonnet, eyes narrowing. "The Ladies' Aid Society is finalizing preparations for Sunday's church social. Pastor Williams specifically asked me to extend an invitation to you." Her tone suggested this was an act of extraordinary charity. "That's very kind," Dawn replied, shifting uncomfortably. "But I have pressing matters at home that day." Mrs. Parker's lips thinned. "You've had pressing matters for every church function since you arrived. People are starting to wonder if you think yourself above our humble gatherings." "Not at all, madam. The social is important, Miss Sullivan. It would do you good to participate in community affairs." Mrs. Parker leaned closer. "And might help quiet certain discussions about your situation." Dawn's cheeks burned. Her situation, unmarried at 22, living alone in her late uncle's cottage, supporting herself through seamstress work, had been fodder for town gossip since her arrival from Boston 18 months ago. "I'll consider it," Dawn lied, knowing full well she'd rather spend Sunday afternoon with her sewing than enduring pitying looks and thinly veiled judgment. Mrs. Parker nodded curtly. "See that you do, 2 o'clock sharp." She bustled away, triumph in her posture. Dawn continued toward the butcher's shop, blinking back tears of frustration. Marysville had been a last resort after her parents' deaths left her nearly destitute. Uncle Henry's unexpected bequest of his modest property had been her salvation, but the small Nebraska town had yet to embrace the Eastern-bred young woman who dared live independently. "Mighty fierce scowl for such a pretty morning," the deep voice startled her. Dawn looked up to find Owen Edwards watching her from where he leaned against the hitching post outside the butcher's. The cowboy's hat was tipped back, revealing sun-weathered features and eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, which he was doing now. "Mr. Edwards," she acknowledged with a nod, hoping he hadn't overheard her conversation with Mrs. Parker. "Miss Sullivan." He straightened, standing a respectful distance away. "Couldn't help but notice Mrs. Parker cornering you. Church social business?" Dawn sighed. "Is there anything that stays private in this town?" "Not a blessed thing," he replied with a chuckle. "Though I reckon Mrs. Parker's voice carries far enough that folks in the next county probably heard your invitation." Despite herself, Dawn smiled. Owen Edwards was foreman at the Circle J Ranch outside town, and unlike most Marysville residents, he'd always been cordial without being intrusive. They'd spoken perhaps a dozen times since her arrival, brief exchanges that left her inexplicably flustered. "I suppose I'll have to make another excuse," she admitted. Owen studied her for a moment. "You know, they don't deserve your smile anyway." The unexpected comment caught her off guard. "I beg your pardon?" "Those folks at the church social," he shrugged broad shoulders. "Been watching how they treat you, like you're some curiosity in a traveling show instead of a neighbor." His gaze was direct without pity. "Their loss, I'd say." Dawn stared, speechless. No one in Marysville had ever acknowledged the town's treatment of her, let alone suggested she wasn't the one at fault. "Mr. Edwards, The butcher's bell jangled as a customer exited, breaking the moment. "Best let you get to your errands," Owen said, touching the brim of his hat. "Good day, Miss Sullivan." Dawn watched him stride toward the livery stable, confusion and something warmer fluttering in her chest. For the first time in months, she walked through town with her head held a little higher. The cottage at the edge of town had been Dawn's sanctuary since her arrival. Small but well-built, with a tidy garden she'd expanded last spring, it offered solitude that increasingly felt like isolation. After returning from town, she set about preparing a simple lunch, Owen Edwards' words replaying in her mind. A knock at her door startled her. Visitors were rare, usually limited to clients collecting mended garments. She wiped her hands on her apron and opened the door to find Olivia Hayes, the schoolteacher, standing on her porch. "Miss Hayes, this is unexpected." Olivia smiled warmly. "I hope I'm not intruding, Dawn. And please call me Olivia. We're neighbors, after all." They weren't. Precisely, Olivia boarded at the widow Peterson's place on the other side of town, but Dawn welcomed the friendly overture. "Of course. Would you like to come in? I was just making tea." Over steaming cups at the kitchen table, Olivia explained her visit. "I need a special dress for my sister's wedding in July. Mrs. Atkins recommended your work." Dawn was surprised. Martha Atkins, the banker's wife, had been coldly polite when Dawn altered her gowns. "That was kind of her. She said you have unusual talent for someone of your background," Olivia admitted with a grimace. "Not the most gracious compliment, but she did insist you're the finest seamstress in 3 counties. Dawn laughed softly. "I'll accept the praise and ignore the rest." As they discussed fabric options and designs, Olivia grew more animated. "I've wanted to call on you for ages, but," she hesitated. "Truthfully, I wasn't sure you'd welcome company." "Why wouldn't I?" Olivia studied her teacup. "You keep to yourself. Some folks interpret that as standoffishness." "I keep to myself because Marysville made it clear I don't belong," Dawn said quietly. "An unmarried woman living alone is apparently scandalous, despite the fact that I've given no one reason for gossip." "It's unfair," Olivia agreed. "This town can be stifling. As the schoolteacher, I'm afforded certain allowances you aren't. Still, I constantly hear I should settle down before my bloom fades. I'm only 25. For the next hour, they talked like old friends. Dawn felt a weight lifting she hadn't realized how desperately she'd needed simple female companionship. As Olivia prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "Will you be at the church social Sunday?" Dawn's smile faded. "I hadn't planned to." "I understand," Olivia said gently, "but if you change your mind, I'd enjoy having an ally there." After Olivia left, Dawn found herself reconsidering. Perhaps with a friendly face beside her, the social wouldn't be so unbearable. She was contemplating this possibility while hanging laundry when hoofbeats approached her property. Owen Edwards rode a magnificent chestnut gelding, his tall frame relaxed in the saddle. He removed his hat as he neared. "Afternoon, Miss Sullivan. Hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," she replied, suddenly conscious of her work-worn apron and stray wisps of hair escaping her bun. "What brings you this way, Mr. Edwards?" "Circle J business in town. Thought I'd take the scenic route back." His gaze swept over her modest home. "Your garden's coming along nicely. Those tomato plants look promising." "Thank you." Dawn was touched he'd noticed. Uncle Henry left the garden rather neglected. It's taken time to restore it. Owen dismounted with easy grace, leading his horse closer. "I remember Henry Sullivan. Good man. Quiet, like yourself. You knew my uncle? Marysville's not big enough to be strangers." "He fixed my boots once or twice." Owen leaned against the fence. "Mind if I water my horse at your pump?" "Of course not." While the gelding drank, Owen regarded her thoughtfully. "Been meaning to ask any chance you'd consider taking on some mending work? The hands at Circle J are hard on their clothes, and Mrs. Jenkins at the boarding house refuses to touch anything more complicated than a straight seam." Dawn recognized the offer for what it was, a way to provide her with additional income without making it seem like charity. "I'd be happy to," she said. "Though I should warn you, quality work doesn't come cheaply." Owen grinned. "Wouldn't expect it to. I'll bring over some items needing attention next week, if that suits you." "That would be fine." She hesitated, then asked, "Will you be attending the church social?" Something flickered in his eyes. "Not likely. Sunday's my one day to catch up on ranch accounts." He studied her face. "Reconsidering your decision?" "Miss Hayes, Olivia suggested I might enjoy it with her company." "The school teacher? She seems a decent sort." Owen gathered his horse's reins. "Still, Don't let anyone push you into going if you'd rather not. I've spent 18 months avoiding these gatherings, Dawn admitted. Perhaps it's time I stopped hiding. Owen's expression grew serious. There's a difference between hiding and protecting yourself, Miss Sullivan. Sometimes folks aren't worth the effort. As he mounted his horse, Dawn found herself asking, "And which category do you place yourself in, Mr. Edwards?" He settled into the saddle, his smile slow and contemplative. "That's for you to decide, I reckon." With a tip of his hat, he rode away, leaving Dawn with more questions than answers. Sunday morning dawned bright and clear. Dawn stood before her small mirror, critically assessing her appearance. She'd chosen her best-dressed navy blue cotton with white piping that emphasized her slender waist. The color brought out the blue of her eyes and complemented her dark blonde hair, arranged today in a more elaborate style than her usual practical bun. "This is foolishness," she muttered to her reflection. She'd spent the morning alternating between determination to attend the social and anxiety about facing Marysville's judgment. Owen's words kept returning to her. "They don't deserve your smile anyway." Why did his opinion matter so much? They were barely acquaintances, yet his validation had affected her more deeply than she cared to admit. There was something about Owen Edwards, his quiet confidence, his direct manner that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't since arriving in Marysville. A knock interrupted her thoughts. She opened the door to find Olivia beaming on her porch, dressed in a cheerful yellow gown. "You look lovely," the schoolteacher declared. "I'm so glad you decided to come." "I'm not entirely convinced it's wise," Dawn confessed as they began walking toward town. "Nonsense. It's high time Marysville appreciated you properly." Olivia linked arms with her. "Besides, I need someone to help me fend off Mrs. Parker's attempts to pair me with her nephew." Dawn laughed. "Is he truly so terrible? Harold Parker is 35, has never lived outside his mother's home, and collects preserved insects," Olivia said dryly. "Judge for yourself." By the time they reached the church grounds, Dawn's nervousness had diminished. The social was being held outdoors, taking advantage of the fine weather. Tables laden with food stood beneath shade trees, while bunting and paper lanterns, to be lit later, decorated the area. Their arrival drew immediate notice. Conversation faltered briefly before resuming with increased vigor. Dawn straightened her spine, determined not to show discomfort. Pastor Williams approached, his wife beside him. "Miss Sullivan, what a pleasure to see you joining us at last." "Thank you for having me, Pastor." Mrs. Williams smiled tightly. "Indeed, we've missed your presence at our gatherings, though I understand a young woman living alone must have many demands on her time." The implication was clear, but Dawn merely nodded pleasantly. "Life keeps us all busy, doesn't it? Your flower arrangements are beautiful, Mrs. Williams. You have a gift." The compliment sincerely offered seemed to surprise the pastor's wife. Her expression softened slightly. "Thank you. The roses are from my garden." They moved on to greet other parishioners, and Olivia squeezed Dawn's arm. "Perfectly handled. Come, let's get some punch before the widow Peterson corners us about her rheumatism." The next hour passed more pleasantly than Dawn had anticipated. With Olivia beside her, the cool receptions from some townspeople were balanced by genuinely friendly interactions with others. The Jensen family, whose daughters wore dresses Dawn had sewn, made a point of introducing her to relatives visiting from Omaha. Mr. Thompson, the elderly storekeeper, engaged her in a lengthy discussion about Eastern fashions. As the afternoon progressed, Dawn found herself relaxing. Perhaps Marysville wasn't entirely against her. She was laughing at something Olivia said when she felt eyes on her. Glancing up, she was startled to see Owen Edwards standing at the edge of the gathering. He wasn't dressed for socializing his work clothes, and dusty boots suggested he'd come straight from the ranch. Their eyes met across the crowd, and he nodded slightly. Dawn excused herself from Olivia and made her way toward him. "Mr. Edwards, I thought ranch accounts would keep you occupied today." "Finished earlier than expected." His gaze traveled over her, appreciation evident. "Blue suits you." "Thank you." She gestured to the festivities. "Since you're here, would you like some punch? Mrs. Foster's berry preserves are particularly good this year." Actually, I came to deliver a message. There's trouble at your place. Dawn's stomach dropped. What kind of trouble? Nothing serious, he assured her quickly. Found some boys from town trying to raid your garden. Caught them before they did much damage, but thought you should know. Relief flooded her. Thank you for stopping them. Wasn't me, actually. My foreman's son was riding past and saw them. The boy fetched me, and I sent the culprits home with threats to tell their fathers if they ever tried such nonsense again. Dawn frowned. Why would they target my garden specifically? Owen's expression darkened. Overheard one saying something about teaching the uppity spinster a lesson. Apparently, your appearance here today ruffled some feathers. Of course it did, Dawn said bitterly. Heaven forbid I attempt to participate in community life. Some folks can't stand seeing others rise above their expectations. Owen's voice was gentle. Don't let it discourage you. She studied him, puzzled. Why do you care, Mr. Edwards, about my garden or whether I attend church socials? Because nobody deserves to be treated poorly for living honestly, he replied simply. And because every time you smile, really smile, not that polite mask you wear in town, it lights up your whole face. The unexpected compliment left her speechless. Before she could respond, Mrs. Parker's voice carried across the churchyard. Miss Sullivan, do come join our discussion about the Harvest Festival Committee. Dawn glanced toward the group of women watching them with undisguised curiosity. I should go. Thank you for the warning about my garden. Would you like me to escort you home later? To check for any damage I might have missed? The offer was tempting, but Dawn shook her head. Olivia and I will walk back together, but I appreciate your concern. Owen nodded, touching his hat. Enjoy your social then, Miss Sullivan. As he turned to leave, Dawn impulsively said, Mr. Edwards, if you're still interested in bringing those clothes for mending, Tuesday afternoon would be convenient. His slow smile made her heart beat faster. Tuesday it is. The remainder of the social passed in a blur. Dawn participated in conversations, sampled the abundant food, and even joined a group singing hymns, but her thoughts kept drifting to Owen. His unexpected appearance, his defense of her property, the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her, all suggested interest beyond neighborly concern. That cowboy certainly seems attentive, Olivia remarked as they walked home later, the setting sun casting long shadows. Owen, Mr. Edwards was merely reporting an incident at my property, Dawn explained, relating the story about the garden. Olivia's expression hardened. Disgraceful. I have a good idea which boys were responsible. They'll find themselves writing extra essays this week. As they approached Dawn's cottage, they surveyed the garden carefully, but found minimal damage, a few trampled plants, and one overturned basket. Not as bad as it could have been, Dawn observed, relieved. Still infuriating, Olivia countered. Will you be all right here alone? You could stay with me at Mrs. Peterson's tonight. I'll be fine, Dawn assured her. This isn't the first time I've faced pettiness. After Olivia left, Dawn sat on her porch, watching darkness settle over the prairie. The social had been a mixed experience, some genuine connections formed, but also the harsh reminder that her position in Marysville remained precarious. And then there was Owen Edwards, whose interest both thrilled and confused her. Men in Marysville generally avoided her, unwilling to court a woman the town viewed with suspicion. What made Owen different? And more importantly, what would come of it? Tuesday arrived with Dawn increasingly anxious about Owen's visit. She'd spent Monday cleaning her already tidy home and baking fresh bread, actions she told herself were simply professional preparation for a client. Shortly after 2 o'clock, she spotted him riding up the path, a burlap sack tied to his saddle. She smoothed her skirts and waited on the porch, determined to maintain composure. Afternoon, Miss Sullivan. He dismounted, retrieving the sack. Hope I'm not too early. Not at all. Would you like to come in? I've made coffee. Her small parlor seemed to shrink with Owen's presence. He removed his hat, revealing dark hair in need of trimming, and settled cautiously on her delicate settee. Nice place you've made here, he commented, glancing around at the modest but tasteful furnishings most inherited from her uncle but arranged with Dawn's careful eye. Thank you. It's become home. She poured coffee into her best cups. Did you bring the items needing repair? Owen opened the sack, removing several shirts, trousers, and a worn leather vest. These are mine, not the ranch hands. Thought I'd test your skills before subjecting you to the worst of their damage. Dawn examined each piece critically. The clothing was well worn, but good quality, with tears and missing buttons that spoke of hard work rather than carelessness. These won't be difficult to mend, she assessed, though this vest needs significant attention. She ran her fingers over the cracked leather. It's quite old. My father's, Owen said quietly, one of the few things I have of his. Dawn looked up, recognizing the significance. I'll take special care with it. As they discussed pricing and time frames, Dawn found herself increasingly comfortable in Owen's presence. He spoke intelligently about topics ranging from ranch management to Nebraska politics, listening attentively to her views without dismissing them as many men would. May I ask you something personal, Mr. Edwards? Dawn ventured as she wrapped the garments for storage. Only if you start calling me Owen. Mr. Edwards makes me feel like my grandfather. She smiled. Owen, then. I'm curious you mentioned your father's vest. Are you not from Marysville originally? He cradled the coffee cup in large, calloused hands. Born in Missouri. My father ran a small cattle operation there until the war. He fought for the Union, came back changed, couldn't settle back into normal life. We drifted west when I was 12, working various ranches. He passed in '68, pneumonia. I'm sorry, Dawn said softly. You were young to lose him. 17. Old enough to make my way. His expression remained composed, but she sensed old pain beneath. Worked my way up from ranch hand to foreman. Circle J's been home for 5 years now. And your mother? Died when I was small. Barely remember her. He set his cup down. What about you? How did a Boston girl end up in Nebraska? Dawn told him about her comfortable childhood as a shopkeeper's daughter, the devastating influenza that took both parents within a week of each other, and the subsequent discovery that her father's business had been failing. After settling debts, there was almost nothing left, she explained. I'd been trained as a seamstress but had few prospects in Boston. When the lawyer informed me about Uncle Henry's bequest, it seemed providential. Must have been quite an adjustment. It is, she admitted. Boston has its social strictures, but they're different from here. A working woman living independently isn't quite so remarkable there. Owen studied her thoughtfully. Marysville's slow to accept change. Doesn't make their treatment of you right. The social wasn't entirely unwelcoming, Dawn acknowledged. Some people were genuinely friendly. And the rest? His gaze was penetrating. Did my message ruin your afternoon? No, it was kind of you to warn me. She hesitated. Though I'm curious why you really came to the social. Surely you could have waited until today to tell me about the garden incident. The directness of her question seemed to surprise him, but he answered honestly. Wanted to see how they were treating you. And maybe, he smiled slightly, maybe I wanted to see if you were enjoying yourself enough to prove me wrong about them not deserving your smile. The admission hung between them, intimate and charged with unspoken possibility. And your conclusion? Dawn asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Owen stood, reaching for his hat. That your smile is even prettier than I remembered, no matter who deserves it. He moved toward the door. I should let you get back to your day. When should I return for the mending? Friday? Dawn suggested, flustered by the compliment. Afternoon, like today. Friday it is. At the doorway, he turned. Miss Sullivan, Dawn, would you consider having dinner with me that evening? There's a decent restaurant in Hartwell, the next town over. Nobody from Marysville to gawk at us. Her heart raced at the unexpected invitation. You're asking to court me? I'm asking to know you better, he corrected gently, without Marysville's opinions coloring every conversation. After that, if you're amenable, courting would be my hope. Dawn should have felt scandalized by his directness. Instead, she found it refreshing after months of veiled comments and social maneuvering. Yes, she decided aloud. I'd like that very much. His smile was brilliant. I'll bring the wagon at 6 on Friday, then. He settled his hat on his head. Looking forward to it, Dawn. After he left, Dawn sat in her parlor, both exhilarated and apprehensive. Owen Edwards had just upended her carefully ordered existence with a coffee cup and dinner invitation. More surprising than his interest was her own eager acceptance. She'd assumed romance was a luxury she'd forfeited by coming to Marysville. The next 2 days passed in a flurry of activity. Dawn completed Owen's mending with particular care, especially the treasured vest, which required patient restoration. Between sewing projects, she questioned her decision repeatedly. A relationship with Owen would only intensify town scrutiny, possibly affecting her livelihood. On Thursday afternoon, Olivia arrived unannounced, eyes bright with excitement. Is it true? Are you dining with Owen Edwards tomorrow? Dawn sighed. News travels quickly. Mrs. Jenkins at the boarding house overheard him asking Sam at the livery to have his wagon ready. Olivia settled into a chair. Tell me everything. Dawn related the essentials, prompting a delighted squeal from her friend. This is wonderful. Owen Edwards is considered quite a catch, you know, hard-working, respected, and if you'll pardon my saying, rather handsome. It's only dinner, Dawn protested weakly. It's a beginning, Olivia countered, and precisely what you deserve after enduring Marysville's narrow-mindedness. She leaned forward eagerly. What will you wear? The question launched an impromptu assessment of Dawn's limited wardrobe, with Olivia eventually declaring her green silk, saved from her Boston life and rarely worn in Nebraska, perfect for the occasion. It brings out the gold flecks in your eyes, she insisted, and shows you're taking this seriously. After Olivia left, Dawn removed the dress from its tissue wrappings, fingers tracing the delicate fabric. She'd brought it west as a talisman of her former life, never expecting to wear it in Marysville. The thought of donning it for Owen both thrilled and terrified her. Friday afternoon, Owen arrived promptly to collect his mended clothes. He inspected each repair with appreciation, particularly moved by her restoration of his father's vest. This is extraordinary work, he said quietly, running his thumb over the careful stitching. You've made it strong again without losing its character. I'm glad you're pleased. Dawn handed him the neatly wrapped bundle. The total is $2.40. Owen counted out the money, adding an extra $1. When Dawn protested, he shook his head. The vest alone is worth it. This was craftsmanship, not just mending. His recognition of her skill meant more than the additional payment. Too often, her work was undervalued in Marysville. Her prices haggled down by customers who viewed sewing as women's work rather than a skilled trade. 6 o'clock, he confirmed before leaving. I'll be ready. Dawn watched him ride away, already counting the hours until his return. She prepared meticulously, bathing with her precious lavender soap and arranging her hair in a more sophisticated style than her everyday appearance allowed. The green silk dress fitted perfectly, though she hadn't worn it since arriving in Nebraska. Looking in the mirror, Dawn hardly recognized herself. The woman reflected back seemed more confident, more vibrant than the cautious seamstress Marysville knew. Owen arrived in a freshly cleaned wagon, wearing a crisp white shirt under a dark wool coat that emphasized his broad shoulders. He'd clearly visited the barber, his dark hair neatly trimmed, face cleanly shaved. When Dawn opened the door, his expression of undisguised admiration made her flush with pleasure. You look beautiful, he said simply. Thank you. You're quite presentable yourself. The teasing remark escaped before she could reconsider it. Owen laughed. High praise indeed. Shall we? He offered his arm with gentlemanly formality that belied his cowboy reputation. The restaurant in Hartwell was modest but respectable, with white tablecloths and a small vase of wildflowers on each table. The proprietor, Mrs. Donovan, greeted Owen warmly. Mr. Edwards, lovely to see you again. Your table is ready. As they were seated, Dawn raised an eyebrow. You come here often? Occasionally. Mrs. Donovan's husband worked at Circle J before opening this place. They're good people. He helped her with her chair. and the food's better than anything in Marysville. The meal was indeed excellent roast beef with vegetables from Mrs. Donovan's garden, fresh bread, and apple pie for dessert. Conversation flowed easily as they discovered shared interests in books and music, debated the merits of city versus country life, and exchanged stories of their respective upbringings. "Did you always want to be a rancher?" Dawn asked as they lingered over coffee. "No," Owen's expression turned reflective. "Always loved horses, but as a boy I wanted to be a lawyer. Used to borrow law books from an attorney in our town, study them by lamplight. What changed? Life, father's death, needed steady work more than education." He shrugged. "No regrets. Ranch work suits me better than a courtroom would have, I suspect." "Still, it's a dream surrendered," Dawn observed. "Those are never easy to release." Owen studied her thoughtfully. "What about you? Was being a seamstress in a prairie town your childhood ambition?" "Hardly," she admitted with a small laugh. "I wanted to design gowns for wealthy Boston ladies, had sketches and fabric samples and grand plans." She traced the rim of her coffee cup. Then reality intervened, as it tends to do. "Do you still sketch designs?" The question surprised her. "Sometimes, though there's little call for French-inspired fashion in Marysville." "Perhaps there should be," Owen suggested. "Seems to me your talents are being underutilized." As they drove home under a canopy of stars, Dawn felt more content than she had in months. The night air was cool, and Owen wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, his hand lingering briefly. "Thank you for agreeing to dinner," he said, his voice low in the darkness. "I've wanted to spend time with you since I first saw you in town last year." "You never indicated interest before now," Dawn pointed out. "You kept your distance from everyone. Seemed important to respect that." He guided the horses carefully along the moonlit road. "Then I saw how they treated you at that social, and keeping my distance didn't sit right anymore." Dawn considered this. "Is that why you said they don't deserve my smile?" "Partly." Owen glanced at her. "Mostly it was seeing how your smile changes your whole face, makes a man wonder what you'd look like truly happy, not just putting on a brave front." The honesty in his voice made her breath catch. "You're very observant, Owen Edwards. Only about things that matter." He slowed the wagon as they approached her cottage. "I'd like to see you again, Dawn. Properly court you if you're willing." Dawn knew she should consider carefully. A relationship with Owen would complicate her already precarious position in Marysville, yet the thought of returning to her solitary existence after tonight seemed unbearable. "I'd like that too," she said softly. He helped her down from the wagon, keeping hold of her hand a moment longer than necessary. "Sunday? We could ride out to Willow Creek. It's peaceful there. Sunday would be lovely." At her door, Owen hesitated. "May I call on you after church as well?" "I usually attend the early service." "I'd welcome your company." Dawn knew accepting multiple engagements signaled serious interest, but found she didn't want to pretend otherwise. Owen smiled, lifting her hand to his lips in a gesture both old-fashioned and thrilling. "Until Sunday, then." As Dawn watched him drive away, she realized with startling clarity that everything had changed. Whether Marysville approved or not, she was choosing happiness, choosing Owen, and the prospect was both terrifying and exhilarating. The following weeks brought a transformation in Dawn's life. Owen called regularly, their outings becoming the highlight of her days. They rode across the prairie, picnicked by streams, and visited neighboring towns where they could interact without Marysville's scrutiny. On evenings when work kept him at the ranch, Owen sent notes with ranch hands, brief messages that she treasured. Marysville reacted predictably. Some, like Mrs. Parker, expressed disapproval through thinly veiled comments about hasty attachments and social disparities. Others, particularly those who had employed Dawn's seamstress services, seemed genuinely pleased for her. "You're glowing these days," Mrs. Thompson, the storekeeper's wife, remarked while Dawn selected thread. "That cowboy's been good for you." Pastor Williams approached her after Sunday service in early July. Owen waiting respectfully nearby. "Miss Sullivan, I'm pleased to see you attending worship regularly now." "Thank you, Pastor. I've felt more welcome recently." His eyes flickered toward Owen. "Mr. Edwards is a fine man, not a regular churchgoer before your acquaintance, but his attendance has become admirably consistent." The implication that Owen attended church primarily to see her wasn't entirely inaccurate. He'd admitted as much during one of their rides, confessing that faith had been a casualty of his difficult years after his father's death. "I believe people find their way to faith in different times and ways," Dawn replied diplomatically. The pastor nodded. "Indeed, and sometimes through different people." He patted her hand. "The Lord works in mysterious ways, Miss Sullivan." As summer progressed, so did their relationship. Owen began joining Dawn for Sunday dinner at her cottage, a development that provided fresh fodder for town gossip, until Olivia started accompanying them as chaperone, lending respectability to the arrangement. In late July, Owen invited Dawn to the Circle J Ranch. "The owner's wife is hosting a small gathering Saturday. She specifically requested your presence." Dawn was surprised. "Mrs. Jenkins? I've never met her." "She's heard about you, wants to meet the woman who's civilizing her foreman," Owen said with a wry smile. "Her words, not mine." "Should I be nervous?" "Not at all. Eleanor Jenkins is kind-hearted, just direct in her manner. She'll like you." The Circle J sprawled across rolling hills 6 miles outside Marysville. The main house, an impressive 2-story structure with wide porches and abundant windows. As Owen helped Dawn from the wagon, she smoothed her pale blue dress, suddenly conscious of its simplicity. "You look perfect," Owen assured her, reading her anxiety. Eleanor Jenkins proved to be a handsome woman in her 50s, with keen eyes and an authoritative manner. She greeted Dawn warmly. "Miss Sullivan, how delightful to finally meet you. Owen speaks of little else these days." "You're embarrassing me, Mrs. Jenkins," Owen protested good-naturedly. "Nonsense. Young love should be celebrated." She linked her arm through Dawn's. "Come, let me introduce you to everyone." The gathering was small, just the Jenkins family, their ranch manager and his wife, and a few neighbors. Dawn found herself welcomed without reservation, a novel experience after Marysville's coolness. Eleanor proved an engaging hostess, drawing Dawn into conversation about her sewing business and Boston background. "Owen tells me you design garments as well as mend them," she remarked during dinner. "I dabble," Dawn admitted, "though there's limited demand here." Eleanor's eyes sparkled. "Perhaps more than you think." "My daughters are returning from school in St. Louis next month. They're constantly lamenting the lack of fashionable options in Nebraska. Would you consider creating something special for them?" The opportunity to design original garments rather than merely alter existing ones was tempting. "I'd be honored, Mrs. Jenkins." "Excellent. We'll arrange details soon." Eleanor glanced between Dawn and Owen with obvious approval. "You must visit again. Perhaps stay a few days next time. The guest room is always available." Later, as Owen showed Dawn around the property, she marveled at the easy acceptance she'd found at Circle J. "Your employers are remarkably welcoming." "The Jenkins family values character over convention," Owen explained, leading her toward the stables. "When Robert Jenkins hired me, I was a rough-edged drifter with little to recommend me beyond horsemanship and willingness to work. They gave me a chance when others wouldn't. They clearly think highly of you now. I've worked hard to earn their trust." He stopped at a stall housing a beautiful black mare. "This is Midnight. I've been training her myself." Dawn approached carefully. The horse snuffled against her outstretched hand, dark eyes intelligent and assessing. "She likes you," Owen observed. "Midnight's particular about people." "She's magnificent." Dawn stroked the mare's velvet nose. "Is she yours?" "She will be. Part of an arrangement with Mr. Jenkins. I train horses for the ranch and occasionally keep one as payment." Pride was evident in his voice. "She'll be ready for riding soon." "I'd like you to try her first." The significance of the offer wasn't lost on Dawn. A trained horse represented substantial value that Owen would entrust his prize to her spoke volumes about his feelings. "I'm honored," she said softly. "Though I should warn you, my riding skills aren't exceptional." "We'll change that." Owen's gaze was warm. "Plenty of time for lessons." The implication of a shared future hung between them, neither acknowledging it directly, but both aware of its presence. As summer gave way to autumn, their courtship deepened. Dawn found herself integrating further into Marysville life, partially through Owen's influence and partially through her own growing confidence. She joined the Ladies' Aid Society, attended church functions without Olivia's support, and even hosted a small sewing circle in her cottage. Her business flourished as well. Eleanor Jenkins proved true to her word, commissioning several garments for her daughters. The young women's enthusiasm for Dawn's designs led to referrals among their friends, creating a modest but steady demand for her original creations alongside her mending work. In mid-September, Owen appeared at her door unexpectedly one Tuesday evening, his expression serious. "Is something wrong?" Dawn asked, immediately concerned. "Nothing's wrong." He seemed uncharacteristically nervous. "I need to discuss something important. May I come in?" In her small parlor, Owen declined to sit, instead pacing briefly before turning to face her. "Mr. Jenkins is expanding the ranch, purchasing the old Peterson property adjacent to Circle J." "That's wonderful news," Dawn said, confused by his intensity. "Isn't it?" "It is. He's offered me a partnership position, junior partner at first, with opportunity to increase my stake over time." Owen's eyes held hers steadily. "It means security, Dawn. A future beyond being foreman." Understanding dawned. "Owen, that's marvelous. You've earned this opportunity." "There's more." He took her hands in his. "Part of the arrangement includes the foreman's house, a proper home, not my current room at the bunkhouse. 2 bedrooms, solid construction, small but sound." Dawn's heart raced as she grasped the direction of the conversation. "I'm not a wealthy man, Dawn," Owen continued quietly. "Can't offer you the comforts you knew in Boston. But I can promise a good home, honest work, and a heart that's been yours since I first saw you trying not to cry after Mrs. Parker cornered you on Main Street." He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, withdrawing a small gold ring with a modest pearl. "This was my mother's. I've carried it since my father died, waiting for the right woman." His voice deepened with emotion. "I've found her. Will you marry me, Dawn?" Joy bubbled up within her, unexpected and overwhelming. These months with Owen had healed parts of her she hadn't realized were broken: her confidence, her sense of belonging, her capacity for happiness. "Yes," she answered, tears blurring her vision. "Yes, I'll marry you." His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as though always meant to be there. Owen gathered her close, his kiss tender yet passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. When they finally parted, Dawn laughed softly. "What will Marysville say?" "Does it matter?" Owen brushed a tear from her cheek. "Not anymore," she realized. "They don't deserve our happiness anyway." Owen's laughter joined hers. "I've created a rebel." "You've created a partnership," Dawn corrected, looking at the pearl glinting on her finger. "When shall we marry?" "November, before winter sets in properly. Gives us time to prepare the house." He held her gaze. "Unless you'd prefer waiting until spring." "November sounds perfect." News of their engagement spread quickly through Marysville. Reactions varied predictably. Congratulations from some, barely concealed surprise from others, and outright disapproval from a few, notably Mrs. Parker, who commented loudly in the general store about hasty decisions and unsuitable matches. Olivia was ecstatic, immediately volunteering to help with wedding preparations. "Nothing elaborate," Dawn insisted. "A simple ceremony at the church, perhaps a small reception after." "You deserve a proper celebration," her friend protested. "Having you stand beside me is celebration enough." Eleanor Jenkins proved an unexpected ally, arriving at Dawn's cottage with wedding fabric samples and practical advice. Marriage to a rancher isn't always easy, she told Dawn over tea. But Owen's a good man, steady, honest, hard-working. Robert and I couldn't be happier about your engagement. Thank you, Dawn said sincerely. Your approval means a great deal to him, to both of us. Eleanor patted her hand. We consider Owen family, which makes you family now too. October brought wedding preparations alongside harvest activities. Dawn created her own wedding dress, ivory satin, with delicate lace she'd saved from her mother's trousseau. Owen worked tirelessly preparing their future home, repairing and improving the foreman's house with help from ranch hands. When Dawn visited the house for the first time, she was touched by Owen's attention to detail bookshelves built for her small collection, a sewing room with perfect light, wildflowers planted along the front path. It's not grand, he said, watching her explore the modest rooms, but it's ours. It's perfect. Dawn's voice caught as she envisioned their life unfolding within these walls. A real home. There's one more thing. Owen led her outside to a small corral where midnight grazed peacefully. Wedding present. She's gentle enough now for you to ride safely. Dawn's eyes widened. Owen. She's too valuable. Not as valuable as seeing you happy. He wrapped an arm around her waist. Besides, she's partial to you. Almost threw me yesterday when I tried riding her. Their November wedding day dawned clear and cold. The church filled with a mixture of Owen's Circle J colleagues, the Jenkins family, and a surprisingly large contingent of Marysville residents. Even Mrs. Parker attended, though her pinched expression suggested reluctant participation. Pastor Williams performed the ceremony with genuine warmth. When Dawn walked down the aisle in her handmade gown, Olivia preceding her as bridesmaid, she saw only Owen waiting at the altar, his expression of love and pride bringing fresh tears to her eyes. Dearly beloved, the pastor began, his voice carrying through the church. We are gathered here today to witness the union of Owen Edwards and Dawn Sullivan in holy matrimony. The words washed over Dawn as she stood beside Owen, their hands joined. This moment, this man, this future, none of it had been part of her plan when she'd arrived in Marysville 18 months ago. Yet somehow, it felt like the most natural progression imaginable. I, Owen, take thee, Dawn, to be my wedded wife. Owen's deep voice was steady, his eyes never leaving hers. To have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. When Dawn repeated her vows, her voice clear and unwavering, she felt a chapter closing the solitary, uncertain existence she'd known since her parents' deaths, and another beginning, filled with promise and partnership. By the power vested in me, Pastor Williams concluded, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Owen's kiss was gentle yet possessive, a perfect balance that characterized their relationship. Applause erupted around them as they turned to face their guests, officially Mr. and Mrs. Edwards. The reception at the town hall showcased Marysville's evolving attitude toward Dawn. Women who had previously avoided her now offered congratulations and homemaking advice. Men who had barely acknowledged her existence raised glasses to toast the newlyweds. Remarkable how marriage improves one's social standing, Dawn whispered to Owen as they greeted guests. Remarkable how little I care about their approval now that I have you, he replied, squeezing her hand. As evening approached, they prepared to depart for a brief honeymoon in Omaha before returning to begin their married life at Circle J. Dawn changed from her wedding gown into a traveling suit she designed specifically for the occasion, practical yet stylish, in a deep burgundy that complemented her coloring. Olivia helped with the final adjustments, her eyes suspiciously bright. I'm so happy for you, she said, hugging Dawn tightly, and so proud of how you've transformed your life here. I'll miss seeing you daily, Dawn admitted. You must visit us often at Circle J. Wild horses couldn't keep me away, Olivia promised, though I hear you'll have your own wild horse to contend with now. Outside, Owen waited with the wagon decorated with ribbons and flowers by the ranch hands. The crowd cheered as Dawn emerged, showering the couple with rice and well wishes. Mrs. Parker approached as Dawn prepared to climb into the wagon. For a moment, Dawn tensed, anticipating a final barbed comment. Instead, the older woman offered a stiff smile. "You've proven me wrong, Miss Sullivan, Mrs. Edwards now," she acknowledged. "I didn't believe you would find your place here. I'm pleased to have been mistaken." The unexpected quasi-apology left Dawn momentarily speechless. "Thank you, Mrs. Parker. That means a great deal." As they drove away amid continued cheers, Dawn leaned against Owen's shoulder. "Did that really happen?" Mrs. Parker almost being pleasant. "Miracles never cease," he replied with a chuckle, "though the greatest miracle is sitting beside me right now." Dawn looked back at the diminishing crowd. Remembering her first months in Marysville, the isolation, the judgment, the desperate loneliness. "I never expected this ending when I arrived here." "Not an ending," Owen corrected gently. "A beginning." He was right, of course. As Marysville faded behind them and the open prairie stretched before them, Dawn realized they were heading toward a future neither could have anticipated that spring day when she'd avoided the church social and a kind-hearted cowboy had offered unexpected understanding. "They don't deserve your smile anyway," he'd said then. But now, as the setting sun gilded the landscape in her husband's profile, Dawn smiled anyway, not for Marysville's approval, but for the joy that had found her despite all odds. 5 years later, Dawn stood on the porch of their expanded home at Circle J, watching Owen teach their 3-year-old son Thomas to ride his first pony. The boy's delighted laughter carried across the yard as Owen led the gentle animal in careful circles. "Mama, look!" Thomas called, waving with one hand while clinging to the saddle horn with the other. "I'm riding like Papa." "I see you, sweetheart. You're doing wonderfully." Dawn shifted their 1-year-old daughter Elizabeth to her other hip, the child's dark curls so like her father's tickling Dawn's chin. Life had flourished beyond her wildest expectations. Owen had proved an exceptional partner, supportive of her growing design business while building his own position at Circle J. After 2 years as junior partner, he'd increased his stake in the ranch, assuming greater management responsibilities while maintaining his beloved horse training program. Dawn's sewing had evolved from simple mending to a respectable small business. With Eleanor Jenkins's continued patronage and word-of-mouth recommendations, she now created custom garments for clients throughout the region. The sewing room Owen had prepared in their original home had expanded to a dedicated workshop built behind their current house, where Dawn occasionally employed an assistant. Marysville had changed too. New settlers, the railroad's arrival, and economic growth had gradually shifted the town's character. While some old attitudes persisted, Dawn and Owen had established their place in the community through steady presence and contribution. Dawn now served on the school board alongside Olivia, who continued teaching and had recently become engaged to a young doctor who'd established practice in town. "He's a natural horseman," Owen declared proudly as he lifted Thomas from the pony and approached the porch. "Got his mother's determination." "And his father's fearlessness," Dawn added, handing Elizabeth to him and accepting their son's excited embrace. "Did you thank Midnight for letting you borrow her foal?" Thomas nodded solemnly. "I gave her an apple, just like Papa showed me." Midnight, now a cherished family horse, grazed contentedly in the nearby paddock. She had produced 2 exceptional foals, the first becoming Thomas's eventual mount, the second already showing promise for future training. As they prepared for dinner, Dawn marveled at the fullness of their life together. The isolation that had characterized her early days in Marysville seemed like a distant memory, replaced by deep connections to family, friends, and community. Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Dawn and Owen sat on their porch watching fireflies illuminate the darkening prairie. "Do you ever think about that church social you avoided?" Owen asked, his arm around her shoulders. The one where Mrs. Parker cornered you on Main Street. Dawn smiled at the memory. Sometimes, it seems like another lifetime. Best thing that never happened to you, he teased, kissing her temple. Second best, she corrected. The best was meeting a certain interfering cowboy who thought I deserved better. Owen chuckled. Still do, Mrs. Edwards, still do. As stars emerged overhead and night settled around their home, Dawn reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought her here from reluctant arrival to beloved wife, mother, and respected craftswoman. The path hadn't been straight or simple, but every step, even the painful ones, had led to this moment of profound contentment. I love you, she whispered, leaning into her husband's embrace. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. Owen's arms tightened around her. Easiest thing I ever did, Dawn. Your smile was always worth fighting for. And in the gentle Nebraska night, surrounded by the life they'd built together, Dawn knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, smiling freely, loving deeply, and finally, completely home.